Arnold's motion debated upon and approved by Council on the 17th of December 2015, and in view of the fact that the Council approved its draft local plan, which sets out the quantum of new development to be provided within the period 2014 to 2034 on the 7th of January 2016, which includes a proposal, policy H10, for a West Basildon urban extension, within which provision for any future secondary school provision is mooted. This is too important an issue to lose track of, and I'm hoping that if you can support this further motion for Council to adopt the official position of being pro-grammar, then it will act as a catalyst for the issue to be raised at educational forums and meetings held by this Council with the movers and shakers and planners that might help realise our aspirations for a grammar school annex in Basildon. I would specifically encourage the leader, Councillor Turner, to get it on the agenda, for example, of the locality board, and also possibly engage with our two MPs. We need to raise the profile of our aspirations to bring us one step closer to the issue being given serious consideration, particularly in light of Councillor Gooding, the Essex County Council Cabinet Member for Education and Lifelong Learning's recent statement when interviewed. During that interview, he confirmed that Essex County Council would have very little say in the process for a grammar school, any grammar school proposals for expansion, as their remit is directly with the Secretary of State rather than with Essex County Council. Nevertheless, the fact is more than 1,000 pupils leaving Basildon each day to attend grammar school in Southend and Chelmsford. It would make sense to have a grammar school annex here in Basildon. I've also got a statement from the Essex and Southend Selective Schools Consortium, and I'll read that out because I was very encouraged by it. They said basically the grammar schools are immensely popular and face huge demand for places. They provide an excellent education for pupils with a wide variety of backgrounds and locations. Most grammar school pupils live a short distance from their school, but some travel long distances. It is not surprising that there is interest amongst Basildon councillors in a grammar school annex in Basildon, but none of the existing grammar schools have been involved in this proposal. Any decisions on new school sites require careful thought and joint planning because they have an impact on many institutions and people. We would be happy to play a part in future discussions. So basically, I have subsequently written to the chairman, Mr. Tom Carter, to request a meeting. The purpose of the meeting is to commence open dialogue with existing Essex grammar schools on the possibility of opening a grammar school annex in Basildon. It's early days, but I believe those discussions could centre around either a standalone grammar school annex and or perhaps even co-locating an annex with a new secondary school in Basildon. These are just conceptual ideas, but I'm really keen for them to be taken forward. We do need to raise the educational bar in Basildon. Every child is gifted and talented in some way. I agree with Councillor Callaghan that vocational skills are equally as important. However, in Basildon, we need to ensure that our education provision provides our kids with access to a variety and choice of education that meets both their emotional and learning needs. And this silly idea that the bright should be penalised because it may be detrimental to other schools does not stack up with me, either as a parent or a local councillor whose residents just want to do the best for their kids. The purpose of this motion, if Council resolves to adopt the official position of being pro-grammar school, is for this decision made here tonight to form a collective submission from Council to the local plan consultation, which closes 24th of March 2016, and act as the catalyst for meaning discussions to take place with policymakers and planners. Thank you.
Does your second wish to speak now, or?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Upper-Hodge has set out the case for this motion very adequately indeed, so I don't need to add a great deal. Obviously, I fully support it. Especially grammar schools do provide an opportunity for working class children who are capable to achieve higher academic standards. They're not elitist, they're just a different form of education. As has been referred to, vocational education is equally important, but it's different and it needs a different type of school. In my day, those who couldn't gain entry at 11 plus had a further opportunity at 13 plus. I don't know whether that still applies today, but it doesn't rule out the possibility of people being excluded simply because they don't manage exams very well. Basildon is a working class town, and our children deserve to have the best opportunities according to their educational needs. At present, as has been said, many of them have to travel outside the borough to get the sort of education that they need, and it's high time that we had the proper provision within this borough for them. So I'm fully supporting it.
Call Councillor Alan Davis, please.
Well, I rise to speak against this motion. After World War II, when Basildon was first envisaged, community and equality were the principles on which this town was built and founded. In its embryonic stages in 1948, the Minister of Town and Country Planning, the Right Honourable Lewis Silken MP, came to this district and spoke at a school, Langdon High Road School. 1,500 people came to hear him speak, and he set out the ideals for this new town to the local residents. In his speech, he said Basildon would be a place where all classes of the community can meet freely together on equal terms and enjoy common cultural and recreational facilities, equality and community. This motion asked us to adopt the position of Basildon being pro-grammar school, a motion that asked us to vote for the exact opposite of those founding principles. We've had grammar schools in Basildon, and we got rid of them. One was in Friends, and one was in St Martin's. In 1968, there were 2 grammar schools in Basildon, Basildon Grammar and Friends Grammar. Progressive, modern ideals of the Labour government and the Labour Council of that era ensured that the divisive days of the 11 plus in Basildon were put to a swift end, as Friends Grammar merged with Craylands to form Friends Comprehensive, and Timberlog Secondary Modern merged with Basildon Grammar to form Basildon Comprehensive. Those progressive modern ideals ended the days when children were categorised as intelligent enough to get into a grammar school if they passed, or if not, in class as a failure at the ages of 10 and 11 years old. To be frank, I find it appalling that grammar schools still exist in modern 21st century Britain, as even today children are marked as successes and failures if they don't quite make the grade. I cannot imagine what that does to the mind of a 10-year-old, as classmates are exalted as they pass, or left with a mark of failure if they don't, or aren't even entered into the exam. A forward-looking Britain and a forward-looking Basildon should treat all children of equal worth. If we succeed academically and graduate to university, or if children succeed at a vocation and become a master electrician, All children and young people must be treated equally and be given the same benefits and the same primary and secondary education. Grammar schools are the antithesis of this. They only allow the academically gifted into their ranks, and by their very nature segregate children into passes or failures. Is this not an awful, deplorable way to treat our children? Is this not the very thing we should be trying to prevent from happening? As a local authority, we should be trying our very best on behalf of our children and giving the schools in our borough the full support and backing they need. What message does this dreadful motion send to the hard-working staff of our local schools? We appreciate all that you're doing, but we wish we had a grammar school here because, oh, wouldn't that be better? Imagine that, Basildon with a grammar school. Well, we'd be on par with Brentwood or Southend. No, never, never. We purposely and willfully removed our grammar schools in the 1960s and provided an equal education for all. Why on earth would we go back to an age where children as young as 10 are made to feel as failures? I urge you to think hard before voting. This is precisely the wrong message we want to send our residents and to our schools, especially when some sections of our community are facing immense pressures, struggling to make ends meet, put food on the table, yet urging their children to do well at school. And then they hear that the council is pro-grammar school, sending the message that the nearest secondary school is not quite good enough. It's demoralising, it's nonsense, and it belongs in the waste paper bin. Vote against. Thank you, Mayor.
Can I call now Councillor Andrew Schrader, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Although I'm somewhat surprised to see us debating a motion near identical to the one successfully moved by my colleague Councillor Arnold at the last meeting, it does enable me to deliver the speech I had prepared for that occasion, and I seem to recall somebody over there expressing a vague desire to speak about it at the time, so hopefully we'll both get a chance. I was happy to support Councillor Arnold's motion, and I shall certainly be supporting this one. I take this opportunity, Mr. Mayor, to congratulate Councillor Arnold on a fantastic maiden speech on that occasion. I think she put the argument for annexation with great clarity and rightly carried the day. Mr. Mayor, almost everyone but the most ardent left-wingers generally acknowledge there has been problems with our comprehensive education system. They just haven't been able, historically, to agree on a way to combat it. Meanwhile, the gap between rich and poor has grown precisely because state education failed children from the poorest backgrounds. Considerable progress has been made thanks to the advent of academies, started tentatively under the auspices of Lord Adonis during the late Labour government, and if I may say so, properly rolled out under the daring leadership of Michael Gove. But one thing Tony Blair did in office, which was a grievous error, and which mea culpa the current government have shamefully failed to reverse, was the decision to ban the creation of new grammar schools. This has meant places at the remaining grammars and subsequently leading universities increasingly being dominated by the middle classes, while poorer families remain trapped in failing comprehensives. As a direct consequence of this approach, we plummeted in the league tables for social mobility. In fairness to Mr. Blair, he didn't start this. Labour's animus against grammar schools is deeply ingrained and goes back, as we've just heard, decades. It was the late Tony Crossland, who, of course, went to public school himself, who was Education Secretary back in the 60s under Harold Wilson, who, ironically, went to a grammar school on a scholarship. Mr. Crossland declared war on the old tripartite education system, famously telling his wife, "If it's the last thing I do, I'm going to destroy every effing grammar school in England." And he very nearly succeeded, Mr. Mayor. The result of this ideological vendetta has been, sadly, that poor families are confined to what NSE research called ghettos of underachievement, whilst the better off have benefited from the expansion of university places. The ladder of opportunity for bright children, which grammar schools provided, was kicked away, often hypocritically by Labour politicians who benefited from public school or grammar school education themselves and, more often than not, chose grammars or independent fee-paying schools for their own children. The centralised secondary school admission system introduced by New Labour resulted in a sharp rise in the number of private educated children gaining grammar places, whilst poorer parents daren't risk putting selective schools as their first choice before they knew the result of the entrance exams for fear of losing out on the best comprehensives. Better off parents can, of course, take the risk, knowing that they have the safety net of paying for an independent school, or simply moving near the better schools. This is the tragedy of the comprehensive education system. It was brought in to try and improve social mobility, but the opposite has happened. We're supposed to have parental choice, but it doesn't work for those at the lower end of the economic spectrum. They attack the supposed elitism of grammar schools, and elitism is a word we'll be hearing a lot of from that side of the room. But the fact is, they've been one of the greatest engines for social mobility. 60% of Oxford's undergraduates were state-educated 40 years ago. Today, it's less than half, as grammar schools have been axed under the anti-selection crusade. For all their empty rhetoric about eliminating elitism and improving social mobility, the education policies of the left have always entrenched class and wealth barriers. The old tripartite system got more people through from the bottom end than the comprehensive system that replaced it. Children like my mother, who was precociously intelligent but came from grinding poverty in rural Wales, had a chance at an excellent education, which she then wasted by getting married at 16 and having me a few years later. Look, comprehensive education did all right by me. I've no qualms about the quality of education I received at the Billericay School, that august seat of learning. But the figures don't lie. Many of our comprehensives let down a generation. 20% of the population leaving school functionally illiterate. The left may not want grammars, but I'll tell you who do, parents. The students in our borough have to fight tens of thousands of students from across 2 counties to access just 13 grammar schools in Essex and Kent, because they don't have their own local campus to aspire to. Little wonder there's such fierce competition. 58% of all awarded grades at Southend High School for boys are A's and A stars. There's a need for annexation, and I hope that no members in this chamber are going to stand up today, as has just happened, and say that they want our students in this borough to have less opportunities than the children elsewhere in Essex. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Before I call the next speaker, I have 9 members who wish to speak. I'm not going to put any more on the list. So my next speaker now is Councillor David Dance.
Mr. Mayor, the people hopefully in this chamber will know that I'm very passionate about education. I left school with a reading age of 7. I couldn't read and write properly when I left school at the adult age of 16. And I, through further education, been able to educate myself and get myself a decent job. I think through learning and education, it gives ability and choices to us all. I am surprised to hear from the Labour side, or Councillor Davis, about classes. I don't see us all having a different class. We're all equal. We talk about equality and we talk about class. So, and we are all equal. And I think that we should give all the children equal opportunities to have access to choices. That choice may be comprehensive at the secondary school, it may be the grammar school. Not all will work. And talking about working class children, again, that goes back to an era of some years ago. My father undertook the 11th class and passed, but declined the opportunity to go off, or wanted to, but his father said, no, you go out to work, 14, you'll be going out to work. So, things have changed. Your own leader went to the Adams Grammar School of your party. So obviously people have made choices. So Jeremy Corbyn went to grammar school, my father would have maybe had a choice, people had choices. So in essence,
Councillor Dance has the floor, please, don't interrupt.
So what I'm trying to say is it's not just about the privileged. There are people, children with abilities, because it is assessed on ability. I understand some children get coached, etc. But some children are gifted, some children have the ability and maybe working a year or even 2 years ahead of themselves. And why shouldn't they, if they're given the opportunity on a selective basis to access a grammar school, why not? That, I hope that parents discuss that with their children, and that's a choice that they make together as a family. And likewise, once again, it's a choice. And when you talk about children feeling failure, I mean, Labour have introduced loads of examinations and testing at all different ages where children may be deemed as failure if they don't pass. So when you talk about testing, I think that's a bit sort of critical, because there's been lots of testing introduced by Labour. I think at the end of the day, I don't have a view on testing because I haven't seen the effect as yet as a parent with the children. I hope that they're getting tested with their spellings and their homework, and try to encourage and help at home and do all that. And if my children or any other child has the ability and working a year or two ahead and can get into a certain school and they can progress, then why not? I do think it's a parent's choice. I believe that this motion or the principle of grammar schools is positive. It's my understanding that the county can't become involved in academies or independent schools, as it were, and it's a matter for them whether they want to extend their schools. Any good grammar school that wishes to extend can, I understand, and if they choose to expand, then I certainly would be supportive of that, because I think through choice we get a better society, and equality for all. Everyone gets equality.
Can I call on Councillor Bill Rackley, please?
Thank you, Mayor. At least this time, those of us who are opposed to the return to the old days of selection, division and inequality will be afforded an opportunity to speak. Because that is really the issue that we talk about. I was interested to hear David Dance talking about this wonderful world where people make choices, not question of choices, as I'll come to in a minute. I would find Councillor Hodge, his speech a little bit more encouraging if she talked about this council becoming pro-school, full stop. Because having grammar schools means exactly the opposite of that. And I'd like to pick up on a few actual points. I'm speaking as someone who was a product of the tripartite system. I went to a technical high school. As people know, I'm a teacher. I taught in all manner of comprehensive schools. I've also taught at Southend Grammar School for girls and for boys. So therefore I'm talking from the point of view of experience as well. And there are very serious class arguments as to why we shouldn't go down the road of being pro-grammar school. I'm going to talk about those here and talk about the issues. I was interested in Councillor Davis's history of education in this borough. And of course, when Basildon had control of education, that's exactly what he did, as an authority doing it. It's interesting, isn't it, that proponents of grammar school rarely highlight their impact on learners who are not selected at 11. Let's clean these people off, give them an elitist education, stuff the rest of them. As I say, I'm a product of the tripartite system. I went through a technical high school, not a grammar school, but I'm aware of what happens at secondary models. And if you're moving down that road, then you're talking about a two-level education system. Let's look at some of the points. For every grammar school, there must be a secondary modern equivalent for those children not deemed intelligent enough for a grammar school education. So automatically, you've got the issues of inequality coming in. Furthermore, arguments in support of grammar schools gloss over the fact that grammar school places are limited and therefore they cut off access to educational opportunity in an arbitrary and quota basis rather than based on objective criteria. The opening, I didn't interrupt you, Doug, so don't interrupt me. The opening of new grammar schools would add to England's fragmented education system, which sees grammar schools in some local authorities, academies, free schools, studio schools, university technical colleges, church schools, and non-counted local authority maintained schools. This is created an educational marketplace where the most disadvantaged children and young people are like those most likely to lose out. Grammar schools have got far fewer pupils with special educational needs or eligible for free school meals. They also have fewer pupils from ethnic groups with the lowest attainment nationally represented in the communities they serve or in comparison with non-selective schools. Also, we talk about opportunities. We heard Frank Ferguson saying working class kids in Basildon, they should have the opportunity, they shouldn't lose out. Let's look at the facts. The number of pupils from families in the most advantaged social groups attending grammar schools is disproportionately high compared to other schools in the local area. In terms of class, it is people from the middle classes who benefit from grammar school education, not working class kids. So let's get that right first of all. Internationally, there is evidence from the OECD which shows that the best performing education systems are those with comprehensive school systems, and that school systems that assume that schools are different.
Could you please wind up, Councillor?
With different expectations and differentiation, perform less well. Let's vote this motion down and let's be pro-school in this borough rather than the return to yesteryear and selection and inequality that seems to be the message coming from the party there and presumably the party there as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, as fascinating as this all is, on your guidance we now have another 35 minutes of debate on this motion. Can I ask that the question be put so that we can get to the budget, because I'm keen that all members get a chance to speak in the budget. I'd like to make my bit.
I think there's been sufficient debate, and I would like to move to the vote because we do have a... So, can I ask all those in favour of the question be put, please? Can I ask all those against, please? Abstentions? That's now carried, so we'll move to the vote. So all those in favour, please show. Right. All those against? Are there any abstentions? That motion is therefore carried. Thank you.